Gloria, my older sister, and I put together a little bit of Charles growing up in his youth all the way up through high school, just to give you an idea of the differences between after he was a champion racquetball player. So Charles was born in Oceanside, but our father was in the Marines, so there were several moves in his early years. And early on, they lived in Hammond, Louisiana. When Charles was very young, he didn't walk until he was almost 2 years old. There wasn't anything wrong with his legs, and it was later determined that he just liked to be carried. When he became a champion racquetball player, our mother's sister, Aunt Elaine, was astonished to hear that because he, barely was functioning and running around. But her own children could climb out of their crib at 6 months of age and ran around on their toes all the time. They did that afterwards. But Gloria said Charles was always on the move as a young child. After he got his first tricycle, there was no catching him. It seemed as soon as he entered the room, he was gone off to the next adventure. Because Charles was a year and a half older than Gloria and about 6 years older than me, so I missed out on a lot of the younger part. But later, when we lived in Hammond in the old priest's house across the street from the church, Charles loved it there, and he took great pride in being an altar boy. We have a picture that I wasn't able to find, but it's of him in the altar boy robes that they wore, and it had this halo around him. I don't know how the picture took it, but it was so apropos. I'll try to find it at some point and show you kind of. But so one of his very favorite jobs when he was an altar boy, he had to ring the church bells in the afternoon at the steeple. So he didn't weigh enough, so both Gloria and Charles had to go over there and jump up and grab his giant rope and pull on the bells. And I was pretty little then, but I loved if I could go with them and maybe get to help pull on the bells. But Charles wouldn't relinquish his job at all. So my sister Gloria first became aware that Charles was very smart when she was in about the 2nd grade and Charles the 3rd. It was 1955 and we lived in New Orleans. The family ritual was to bring home your report cards and show them to Mom and Dad. Charles got straight A's in Catholic school. Always. Who does that? The nuns had discussions with our parents at the parent-teacher meetings about his IQ level, but it was never divulged to us, or him treated differently. He developed a lifelong love of learning and reading, which served him well in his later years as an attorney in San Diego. When Charles was 10, in about 1958, we moved out to California from Louisiana and lived in a wonderful, very large apartment complex in Imperial Beach. There were 2 pools, and we used to run like the wind, playing gray ghost and hide and seek. Endless hours were spent in the swimming pool shouting Marco Polo. But he was not a budding athlete at this time, and definitely not one of the first to be picked to be on a team at school at recess. But it was here that Charles received his first basketball as a present on Christmas Day. Christmas was always a great celebration, complete with lots of food, and my very favorite Whitman's chocolates were the biggest thing there. But Charles began bouncing the ball off the wall, in the carport, on the sidewalk, on our patio, and kept it up for hours. Hours. There were no hoops or basketball courts where we lived, so it became wall ball. One day, Dad came out on the patio in great exasperation and said, "You can't make a living bouncing a ball." But he could, and he did. In 1963, we moved to San Carlos. Charles's love of voracious eating was of note at this time. He often ate 2 to 3 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches before we were going to eat dinner. He was always on the move, so I guess he was just growing and hungry. But there was usually no dessert, but sometimes our mom would buy our favorite treat with those little white powdered sugar donuts. If he saw them, he would eat them all, every single one. My sister and I put our heads together and began hiding our share in the pots and pans where he would never look, and Charles didn't find them. It's the only way we got some. So Charles was 15 when we made that move to San Carlos, and in looking back, I imagine that was a really hard age to move away from your best friends. He couldn't drive yet, so he rode his bicycle back to Imperial Beach from San Carlos several times to see his friends Arnold Watts and Ben Hack, are the names that I recall hearing. And that was probably the beginning of strengthening his legs for racquetball, riding around his bike all the time. But he placed great value in his friends and always put in the effort to keep in touch with them. His close friends were like family to him, especially the close relationships with Dr. Bud Muehlheisen and Carl Loveday. One of Charles's loves was watching sports. I can't tell you how many basketball games I watched with him screaming out the names of Wilt Chamberlain, Larry Bird, and Lou Alcindor, which dates you how far back that was, when they made all their great plays, and he was so excited, he would scream. The extra TV was in my room, is why we were watching. He wanted me to watch with him, so he could use the TV. But it was great fun time, one-on-one with my brother. As some of you may know, Charles had a bit of Huckleberry Finn in him. There was not a chore or job too small or too big that he couldn't try to wheedle someone else to do for him. Even when my father bought a sit-down driving mower for our yard, more often than not, one of his friends was mowing the lawn instead of him. The same with painting the house at one point. I came home and Roger Souders was painting the house and Charles wasn't even there. The best thing that happened to all of us was a membership in the San Carlos Country Club when we moved to San Carlos. And when you bought that house, you were eligible to join. It was $13 a month for a family. It was a country club with everything you could believe. It was the perfect place for kids to meet up with friends and hang out and play sports. We lived up there as much as we could. Charles had played handball in school, but got introduced to paddleball by Dr. Muehlheisen. He absolutely loved it and became obsessed with being the best player. He would practice hours on end at the San Carlos Club. There were 2 courts there, and as long as the court was available, he could play on it at any point. And you didn't pay for anything, it was just your monthly membership. So that may have been a crucial point of how he was able to become as good as he was, because if he was going somewhere and paying for an hour or a couple hours a week, it wouldn't have been the immersion he had in playing racquetball, practicing over and over and over certain shots. He was laser focused and it showed in his improvement. What he lacked in athleticism, he made up for in playing the smartest game. It was amazing to see him hold center court while he put the other player on what he called the world tour. If you can hear or experience that. It was awesome to see and watching. We both made many of our lifelong friends in the families that belonged to the club. There were many times Charles would hold court when we were all hanging out and he would make up questions to grill everyone on trivia. Years before the trivia games were invented. These were the 60s and early 70s. The crux of the game was you not only had to know the answer, but you had to be the first one to shout the answer out to get any credit. For some reason, one of his favorite questions was, what is the capital of Canada? He must have asked that one a million times and sneaky opportunities, and he'd yell it out really, really fast, so whoever could think fast enough, like what did he say, and yell out Ottawa was the winner of that question. He did that all the time. Our dad thought football was the only real sport, and again, certainly didn't think Charles could possibly make any money from playing racquetball. Boy, was he wrong that time. And looking back over the significant people in Charles's life, I was struck by the fact of how rich he was with so many really close friendships. And all the paddleball and racquetball people he was so close to and had the opportunity to mentor. He loved you all so much. Holiday dinners won't be the same without him regaling us with stories of his interesting or bizarre law cases. But what am I supposed to say now? To Charlie we say,
we thank you, Charlie, and we celebrate your life.
Okay, Marty Hogan is up next.